So a very good evening to everybody just after 7 o'clock here in the UK, and it's Mother's Day. I hope everybody has remembered. I'd like to thank Amazon for screwing up, I think is the best way of describing it, the order for my my ex-wife, and rather than getting a box of chocolates from her little boy, she got a pack of biros. Thank you, Amazon. So we have a great technical presentation for you tonight. It's all about OBS and Zoom, making your presentations a little bit slicker, a little bit more dynamic. And I'll introduce our presenter in a minute. If I can just quickly run through the little bits of housekeeping. If you can, please make sure your cameras are on as best as possible. I know people need to eat and do little bits in the background, but as far as kind of the presenter's concerned, it's so much better to have a row of faces rather than blank screens. This is being recorded this evening and will be available on the District 91 YouTube channel. My computer permitting, so it might be a couple of days before it gets edited and put up, but it will be on the YouTube channel. So if you do need to duck out halfway through, then don't worry, we'll make sure we send you the link. If you can please keep your microphones off during the presentation, that would be really, really appreciated, so we don't get any interference. But there will be an opportunity at the end for you to ask questions, and by all means then have your microphones on and contribute as best as you'd like. As I say, because this is quite a technical one, it is well worth going back and kind of reviewing the footage afterwards, because no doubt there'll be bits that people have missed. But the golden rule, as with all these webinars, is sit back, enjoy it. It's great value in terms of your Toastmasters membership for these events, and absorb as much information as you can. So I'd like to welcome our presenter this evening, DTM, very, very familiar with those who are on the WhatsApp and Easy Speak support channels, resident expert on most things Toastmasters and technical, and somebody that's really, really good at helping people out. So I am so looking forward to this. Our webinar this evening on OBS and Zoom, I present Kit Barrett. Kit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andy. Right, so it's not only Mother's Day. I want to set the scene of the appropriate geekiness. What else is it today? Anyone want to offer a suggestion?
It's Raspberry Pi Day, isn't it?
It is indeed Raspberry Pi Day. Let me just lose that. It is indeed Pi Day. It is 3/14 in American terms. So 14th of March is Raspberry Pi Day or Pi Day. So this is just setting the scenes of the appropriate kind of geek level for the evening. Right. I want this to be interactive. There will be opportunities at the end for questions. If there are other things, thank you, Josie. Josie. If there are questions that you have, there is a session at the end for question and answer. But if there are things that you want to pipe up, you want to contribute, you're very welcome to do so. You can type into the chat. I've got a lot of stuff to look at on the screen in front of me, so there's no guarantee I'm going to see the chat. You are welcome just to unmute yourself and shout something out. I'm more than happy to be interrupted. I have a couple of pages of notes of things that I can talk about. I'm intending to talk for kind of 40 minutes or there 45 minutes, something like that. I may get through all of my stuff, maybe not, but we'll just see how it goes. And obviously, if there's lots of questions, then great. That's all the better. I thought maybe I would start off. I've done a little kind of poll of people who I have used, downloaded, or whatever OBS. So OBS, strictly speaking, OBS Studio is some free software that really helps us make our presence on online systems such as Zoom that much better. It allows us to do some things that we can kind of do just using Zoom, but it just makes things that little bit better, that little bit more professional. And it also adds some functionality that would be really quite difficult to do just using Zoom. So the sort of things that we might want to do with our online presence are things like having a virtual background. Unsurprisingly, because the sun is out in my background, this is not what what my background really looks like. I'm sitting in front of a green screen. So I've got a whole load of green card on the wall behind me. And so I'm building a virtual background. And one of the things that OBS is very good at is to allow you to do something more, neater, better with your virtual backgrounds. It's also a much better way to do screen sharing. Although you can do screen sharing in Zoom, and indeed I'm going to have to do some screen sharing for looking at the OBS application, there are better ways of showing images, applications, and so on to the audience than simply doing a screen share. So if you do a screen share, it takes over Zoom, it doesn't allow you to talk alongside it, and so on. And finally, the other sort of thing that you might want to try to do over Zoom that is moderately tricky to do is sharing audio. And OBS can also help with playing in audio clips and so on. Again, you can kind of do that with Zoom directly, but OBS allows you to do that a little bit better. So what sort of things can OBS do? So I'll be looking at a number of these as we go through the presentation. So we can do captioning. So we can add a text caption. So if we want to name ourselves or add captions, we can do that kind of thing. So real simple adding of a caption. And we can add images. So we can replace our particular picture, our video camera picture, with some images. So for example, I can just push some buttons down here and pop up some art by some kind of local artist. That's some of my paintings. So that was like really, really easy to just chuck some information onto the screen, some images onto the screen. I can composite images. Now, what I mean by composite, and I'm conscious that I may use technical words that people are aware of, is to build up an image from multiple layers. So you're seeing me, but I'm composited against my virtual background. So I've been chopped out by using a Chroma Key, technical term for it. The background is green. The compositing has removed the green and replaced it with the lounge image that you see behind me. We can do very much more complex compositing. Indeed, this caption is a composite. It's being superimposed in front of me so that it appears a layer in front. So we can do a lot of that kind of compositing within Zoom and present a mixture of different images to our audience. We can also do quite complicated audio mixing. So OBS has an audio mixer, which means that I can play in different sources, adjust their levels, apply various audio effects to that, and so on. So it's not just about pictures. I can also use it to change audio, to mix audio, and so on. And what can we use OBS Studio for? Not only can I use it to feed Zoom, but I can also use it to stream. So I can stream to Facebook, I can stream to YouTube. It's used, I believe, quite a lot by gamers who want to share live games. So they will use OBS and send their games real time, possibly with commentary, to a live YouTube channel, possibly a live Facebook channel. And it also can be used to record. So instead of sending the images and the sound somewhere else, we can make a recording on our own computer, which is a pretty good way of doing a practice. You want to practice a speech, you can just make a recording and then play that back. or then take that and share that with other people. Right, so OBS. If you're not already watching this in speaker view, I suggest you do, because there will be some fairly high levels of detail in some of the images that I'll be sharing. But this is OBS Studio. OBS Studio is freeware. It's available for Windows, it's available for the Mac, and it's available for Linux. I do actually have OBS Studio running on a Raspberry Pi, so it will run on something even as small as a Raspberry Pi, which runs Linux. It, I am told, is on occasions a little bit flaky. I have known of it doing some slightly weird things. Sometimes I need to boot it twice to get it to incorporate my camera image. And there are other people who have said that they have seen some problems with it. Given that it's free, I think that's pretty good. So obviously the first thing that one would have to do is to go to obsproject.com, the URL at the top of here, and download Windows, Mac, or Linux, if you're a real proper geek, to your computer. Once you've done that, when you install it, the first thing that it will ask you to do is to say what you're going to use it for. Are you going to use it for recording, for streaming, or for virtual camera? What is meant by virtual camera is that OBS Studio provides a video to Zoom that appears to Zoom to be a webcam. So when I go into Zoom, and obviously maybe it's not obvious, I can't share Zoom over Zoom, but if I bring up my profile, the settings and video settings, I choose OBS camera as my source. So OBS appears to Zoom to be a camera. So what I'm doing is I'm building some images and providing that to Zoom as if it were a camera, and similarly as if it were an audio source. So that's virtual camera mode. And mostly what I'm going to be talking about this evening is that mode. But we can also use it, and I will mention how actually OBS is better if you stream your club meetings or parts of your club meetings to Facebook. OBS Studio is pretty good for that. Actually, kind of a show of hands. If you haven't got your camera on, a virtual show of hands, how many of you stream your club meetings or part of your club meetings to either Facebook or, I don't know, Twitch? So Russell says no, I think. The thumbs down. So we do Basingstoke Speakers Club, and we get a huge amount of interest. We get a lot of interest from our live streams, and we typically stream table topics or a speech or the evaluation, some small chunk of the program, the evening's program. Okay, so after you have downloaded it and you have run through the initial configuration and told it that you want to set it up for a virtual camera, which I assume you would want, what I want to talk about next is the basic principles of OBS. So what exactly it does and how we go about using it. Right, so now I am going to have to screen share because things get a little bit wacky if I try to use OBS to show OBS. So I hope you are seeing my OBS screen, which I'm screen sharing. Oh, didn't need to do that. We can use OBS to provide a whole load of different types of sources of images. So we can use it, and one of the most common uses of OBS is to share a PowerPoint presentation. So we can do some really quite clever things with PowerPoint, having our PowerPoint presentation behind us. And I have got some PowerPoint presentations here, so that this is a little PowerPoint presentation that I could be sharing. I'll show how that works in a little while. We can use it as a slideshow. You just saw I was sharing some images. I was calling those up one at a time, but I can share a whole series of images, the sort of thing we might want during a break of a conference or something. Some of the other sorts of reasons that we might want to use it for Toastmasters is as a speech timer. Rather than having somebody timing on a stopwatch or a clock on a phone, there are some timing apps, and so we can put a timing app up on the screen and it just runs and does the lights for us. Something else we might want to use is the awards. If we've got the best speaker, best Toastmaster, some award like that, OBS allows us to present that in a rather more slick way than simply holding up a certificate or maybe screen sharing from PowerPoint. And as I said before, playing media. If you're wanting to play some media in, you can use this as a way to play that media in. Right, okay, you are seeing on your screens, I rather hope, what OBS Studio looks like. Obviously, I've set this up already for a whole bunch of different images and screens and so on. So what I want to do now is to talk you through the basic principles of how we build up the image that we're going to share as a virtual camera. You'll see down here, I have got stop virtual camera, that I've enabled the virtual camera, which is how I'm feeding to Zoom. If I was to click that, my image would disappear off this webinar. And actually, there's two ways of doing the virtual camera. The most recent versions of OBS include this virtual camera built in here. There is also a virtual camera plugin that you can add, which adds multiple virtual cameras and can be set up so that as soon as you start OBS, it switches on and immediately starts streaming your output to Zoom. The way that OBS builds up its images is from a series of layers. And you can see down here, I have that series of layers. The top layer, the layer that's most forward, is the image of the Raspberry Pis. And I've got little eye icons here that I can turn on and off those images. So this image is in front of me. If I click it, it hides it and it doesn't obscure me. This image is simply a still from my hard drive. Behind that, I have a number of other sources of video. So I'm going to have a look at what options we have for those sources of video, or audio for that matter. So up at the top here, the first two items that I can choose as part of the output are an audio input capture device. So I can have some audio coming into my device. There's also an audio output capture. So if I've got something that's playing audio, I can capture that and bring that back into OBS to feed it through to Zoom or wherever it's going. I'll be talking rather more about audio later on because audio can get sufficiently complicated that I've had to do some system drawings to explain how it's all connected up. I can also have a browser source. I mentioned earlier on about using the browser, using a timer. Well, I have a timer. So if I bring up this timer, this is a speech timer, freely available on the internet. And I can use this to pre-program table topics, regular speeches, or other times. And from this timer, I can just have it running and it changes its colors at the appropriate moments. If I right click on the timer, I've got interact, and that will then bring up a little window. I don't think you're seeing that. So I'm going to put that over there. And then
yeah,
do
we
that.
can see it, Kit. Yeah.
All right, okay. Let me put that back and go back to there. So see what I'm sharing. Yeah, it's not apparent to me what exactly you're seeing, so thank you. So this is me being able to interact with that web browser background, and I can click this start button, and then the timer will start running, and at the appropriate points it will change color, and the image just kind of up here that you can see in the corner of my screen would change color at the appropriate moments. So this is a really neat way of doing timing, because it means you like it does it itself. You just push the button and it does the timing for you. So that's you know a neat way of doing that. You saw earlier on that I added a caption. So let's go down here. Browser color source. If you wanted some color, you can just add a field of color. I used the color source as part of the caption for my name. So when I brought up this caption here, this is made up of a number of different components. I've got a blue color source, I've got some captions, and I've got a drop shadow on this. And these are then grouped together so that I can turn them on and off in one go. So that's why I would use, or may want to use, a color source. Next down is display capture. This allows me to capture the whole of a screen. If I've got multiple screens and I've got PowerPoint running on another screen, I can share that entire screen. So the sort of thing that I might want to do with that is this. So what I'm now doing is I've got on another screen a PowerPoint presentation that is running, and I've composited this so there is me in front of the PowerPoint, in front of the lounge that's sitting behind here. And so if I point up here, you can see, it's like really hard to figure this out. I'm in front of this, but it is in front of the lounge. And what I'm doing to make this work is I'm running that PowerPoint presentation on another screen, and I'm sharing that screen. Or I could be slightly cheating that here. And that then allows me to run this PowerPoint presentation with really quite nice, slick, smooth animations, which isn't what happens when you run it in as a Zoom background. And it also means that I'm still in the picture. So running a presentation, it's often quite nice to see the person who's running the presentation while at the same time running the slides. And I've set these slides up to animate in, you know, kind of a nice way, blah, 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 flowchart, business graphic. I don't know, I think this is like a way nicer way of running a presentation than simply screen sharing. Let me go back to there. So that was capturing another screen. So that was display capture. Game capture. I'm afraid I can't tell you very much about game capture. I'm not a gamer, so I guess it captures the output of video games, Call of Duty or something. I don't know. I'm not a gamer, so I've not used that. I can also just capture or share an image. That is how I am sharing this Raspberry Pi. What I've done is I have told it the properties of that item that I want to share are this route here, this path, and this icon. This pi.jpg file. So this is like a really, really simple way of putting an image up. I just tell it that it is an image, and I just give it the path. So I would click on Browse and bring up some images like that. Image slideshow. What happens with image slideshow is that I can give it a whole series of images that I want it to show. So a series of file names and paths, and it will just cycle through that as a slideshow. Again, something that might be useful during the break in a conference or something. Media source. If I'm wanting to play in some media, I select media source, point at the file, And then in addition to sharing that, I also have some media controls that I can use to play and stop and so on. This becomes a little bit meta. So as a source, I can share another scene. So all of this is called a scene. This set of sources composited in a certain way is called a scene. And over here, I have the scenes that I've previously set up and defined. So for example, PPT plus presenter is this scene. And this calls up all of these sources. So I can have as an input to a scene, another scene. Text, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. So text, again, as part of this caption that you saw earlier on with my name, I have this caption text source, and I can select the font, the color, type in what I want. And it's also possible to use as the text input a external text file, which means you can do some really very clever things, such as having some other software alter the contents of the text file, which then appears in Zoom. Let's hide that. My webcam, of course, the thing that we're going to be using this is a webcam. You can plug multiple webcams in. I've done that before now, where I've had a webcam pointing at what I'm doing so that I can switch between the different webcams. And the properties of this, if I look at this, this tells me what my webcam is and the video settings and so on for that. So if I added a webcam, it asks me which webcam, and if there's only one, it's obviously that one webcam.
Sorry, Kit, quick question. On the webcam, whereabouts does the OBS webcam fit in? Because presumably your Logitech is the one that's on the screen or over your screen, but where does the OBS one fit in then?
Do you mean, so OBS has a virtual camera?
That's right, yeah.
So OBS, its output appears to be a webcam, and that then goes into Zoom. So within Zoom, so the OBS virtual webcam is its output. I wouldn't be able to use that as an input source. What I might be able to do, just bear with me a second. So if I go into here and I share the top left-hand corner, so these are the settings within Zoom. If I go and have a look at video, you will see here, I think you will need to be looking at my image, not the shared screen. So if I just stop the shared screen for the moment. So if you're looking at this image, you can see I have picked here as the source for my output, what it is that I'm feeding to Zoom is the OBS virtual camera, rather than my Logitech webcam, which is the one on top of my monitor, the integrated webcam, and so on. So that's OBS's sort of webcam. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Excellent, terrific. Let's go back to there. And let's carry on screen sharing. Right, so that's my webcam, and that is a video capture device. So anything coming into the computer is a video capture device. You could, for example, be capturing the output of some other video source. And finally on here is window capture. So if I'm wanting to share some part of the screen, not the whole screen, not an entire display, but part of it, I would use window capture. So this would allow me to capture, for example, the PowerPoint edit screen if I'm wanting to show PowerPoint, or I'm showing an application or showing a browser, something like that. So for example, when we were looking at this browser here, we're looking at this window. This is a window capture. It is capturing the browser window. Right, so those are the different sources, and they are stacked in this way so that the Pi is in the front, and whatever where we see it replaces the video sources behind. When I click on this, let's turn it on just to make it a little easier, I have some handles on the corners of any image, and I can grab those handles and move the image around to set up how exactly I want it to appear, how I want it to composite, set its positions, and so on around the screen. I can also alter exactly how things composite by the use of filters. So if we go and have a look at the webcam, I mentioned that actually behind me is a green screen, and the way that I am appearing in front of this kind of lounge background is that I have a filter called a Chroma Key. So if I go and have a look at my filters, I have there Chroma Key. So what I've told it is anywhere where the background is green, replace it and don't see whatever is there. So if I were to change that to blue, it's going to go kind of thoroughly horrible because obviously the background isn't in fact blue. There are other filters that you can add, a whole series of filters to change the look of an image. I'm using some color correction just to slightly tweak the color output from my camera. I'm afraid I'm not able not to do that. My first proper full-time job was working at the BBC as a color balance engineer, and so having correct colors is important to me, so I'm going to run the color correction. So there's all sorts of things that we can do with those filters to affect how the images look and how they composite. And we have these little eye buttons so that I can turn on and off different things as I need them. We may wish to not only resize an image, but we may wish to crop it as well. If I hold down the Alt key on one of these pick handles, as I move that edge, it is cropping the image. You can see here that my face goes away. So I can use that to crop top, bottom, left and right to remove parts of the picture that we don't want to see. Okay, so that's a bunch of things about what we can do with video sources and building up those sources into scenes. And over here, these scenes are built up into a scene collection. There may be, I might have a requirement for a whole bunch of different scenes for one type of presentation and a different collection for another sort of presentation. And so I can quickly switch between those scene collections. At the moment, I've only got a single scene collection. And that's a very quick and easy way just to say, right, I'm doing a business presentation and I want a certain set of scenes, or I'm doing a Toastmaster presentation, I want a different set of scenes. And so I would just simply select that scene collection, and that would load up all of these scenes down here. Okay, so what you're seeing here is this output, whatever I have selected down here. What I'm now going to do is to go into studio mode, and in studio mode I have what we in TV studios call program and preview. Over here is preview. This is what we will see next, and on the right, it's always the right, even in Arabic worlds where they go kind of the other way, is program, which is the output. I can choose what will appear here. So I can, for example, put my PowerPoint and presenter, and this will be the next image that I see when I press one of these transition buttons. So if I hit this fade button, you will see over 300 milliseconds, I fade through to this scene. I can configure this so that what was here flips back over to here, and when I hit fade, it switches back. But I don't have that set up that way because I have some other buttons on something else that does that for me. I can choose all sorts of different transitions if I wish. I can just do a fade to black and fade back up. And in these scene transitions down here, we can use the kind of transitions that I've seen Guy using. So I've got a slide transition here. So we have a slide from one side to the other. I can add that slide, and now we do a little slide across, kind of, instead of fading, what we get is a slide like this. And I can change the transition times and so on there. Let's do a fade back. So this is studio mode. This allows me to prepare what it is that I next want to see. And when I'm ready to show that, I just hit the fade button or the transition button that I wish to use. And as Marcus was saying earlier on, you can program some of these buttons into keyboard shortcuts. So I've programmed the decimal point key to be a fade button. So if I hit the if I hit the decimal point button on my keyboard, it will fade. So that again is a very quick and easy way of running OBS. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts to select things over here. So if I regularly want to call up PPT plus presenter, I can program that as a keyboard shortcut. I can call it 7 or something like that. So I press 7 and it will call that up here, and then I press the decimal point key and it will transition to that. A lot of these things are set up in settings. I go over to here and settings. The hotkeys, which is what I was just talking about, lots and lots of actions that you can program to be hotkeys. You can see here, quick transition fade is the number pad decimal. So these are actions. Down here, there's a whole series of buttons that I can associate with certain of my scenes. I was talking about this PPT presenter and how I could use, for example, the number pad 7. So there's number pad 7, I click OK. And now when I press number pad 7, I get that scene. And if you didn't believe me, number pad 7, there we go. I press number pad 7 and that transition happens, or that preview gets ready. Okay, so those are again some straightforward. Okay, I've rattled through this quite quickly because I've got a lot to talk about. Some of the simple transitions. What I want to talk about next is streaming to Facebook. If I want to stream to Facebook a meeting, I do that from Zoom. I don't have a huge amount of control over what goes to Facebook. Basically, if I'm doing the streaming, it's sort of what appears on my screen. But if I do multiple spotlighting, that isn't what gets streamed to Zoom. If I'm streaming from OBS, I can choose through all of this what exactly gets sent to Facebook. So I could, for example, have like a countdown, like Andy put up before, a countdown clock to the start of the event, and that's what I stream to Facebook before my event starts. As speakers come up, if I want to name them, I can name them in OBS, and that's what gets added into my stream off to Facebook. So that gives me a much greater level of control over what I'm streaming to Facebook. And what I would be using as the source, the principal source, is a window capture of Zoom. So I would be capturing Zoom and sending that to Facebook. I said I would talk about audio. I'm a video engineer. Audio is always a secondary item as far as I'm concerned. Down here we have an audio mixer. So there is a number of sources of audio. I've got desktop audio, so anything that is playing on my computer desktop out as audio would appear here. I've got the audio that would be coming from my Logitech webcam, this webcam rather, and you can see as I speak, my microphone is appearing on this at the bottom here. So if I'm wanting to stream a number of different sources, either back into Zoom or to Facebook or YouTube, I can set that up here. I can set up these sources and what exactly are on these sources, like pretty much everything else is set up on the settings. So these are the sources of audio that I can call up and add to this mixer down here. Things do get somewhat more complicated if you're wanting to do mixing and using Zoom. And because this is really complicated, I set this up. Let me just play the presentation. Oops, wrong way. Okay. Lack of preparation here. So let me screen share that presentation instead of sharing that presentation. Right, so OBS Zoom audio configuration. This was sufficiently complicated that I'm a visually driven person, so I wanted to call up some pictures so that it made some sort of sense. This is my computer. There are audio sources going into it, the audio mixer within the PC, and there are some audio outputs. In other words, I can choose what I'm listening to. So in computer settings, I can choose the microphone source, and bottom right-hand corner, I can choose what I'm listening to. So this is pretty straightforward. We have the same kind of thing in OBS. I can choose, in fact, mix my audio sources, and I can choose the audio output. And actually, we have the same thing in Zoom. I can choose where the audio comes from and what it is that I'm listening to. Things get a little bit more complicated when we're trying to connect Zoom and OBS. Here we've got OBS and here we've got Zoom. Now, one of the choices for Zoom is not the output of OBS. That's not a choice. For Zoom, all I can choose are microphones. So what I need to do is to make the output of OBS appear to be a microphone source to Zoom. And so what we need is a virtual cable. And that virtual cable has got an input and it's got an output. I'm using another bit of free software. So VB Audio Virtual Cable, this is the URL to go get that. It's donationware. I paid a little bit of money to the guy that wrote the software. And this allows me to have something which, as far as OBS is concerned, is a destination audio. And as far as Zoom is concerned, is an input audio. This is how I can do my mix in OBS and send that into Zoom. In OBS, it looks like this. So my monitoring device, what I'm sending to is the cable input of VB Audio Virtual Cable. And from Zoom's point of view, my microphone, it's obviously not actually a microphone, is the cable output. So this is sending from Zoom, coming into Zoom. If I'm trying to stream to Facebook, so I'm doing this the other way around, instead of taking OBS and sending it to Zoom, I'm doing it the other way around. I'm taking Zoom as a source to OBS, and that output is then going off to Facebook. We've got something that ends up looking a little bit more like this. Here is OBS, with all of its different sources. And I might, for example, want to be playing in some audio clips. OBS, to play these audio clips into OBS, I'm using virtual cable A. OBS is going into Zoom over virtual cable B. This whizzes backwards and forwards over the Zoom network so that other people can hear that. And so that I can hear that, I'm taking this output over virtual cable C into a virtual audio mixer going to my headphones. And so this is often my setup for a Zoom meeting. I'm not sure often. This is a setup that I would use if I'm trying to do something complex using OBS, going out to Zoom, and for me to be able to hear what's going on. Right, and the sort of reason that I would want to use that is if I've got applause, if I'm wanting to play some audio clips in, and so on. Right, well, that's 45 minutes. It's 46 minutes according to my clock. I've gone through quite quickly all of the things that I wanted to talk about. I would now like to open this up to some questions. If anybody, oh yeah, thank you very much, Andy. That was the timer that I was using, has been put into chat, and it's quite a natty little tool. I use it quite a lot these days. So I wanted to give an opportunity for some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Benjamin, go ahead.
Yeah, Kit, that was brilliant. You covered a whirlwind tour. Thank you very much for that. And a lot of detail there, which I will probably go and review again. I was wondering, is it possible to, I noticed you were doing the transition of a whole slide to a whole slide. Now, is it possible to take like a screen that you're looking at now and then sort of subdivide it into 4 quarters so that you can then start moving it around and doing things with it?
I mean, I can put different images in different parts of the screen. So, for example, you saw the Raspberry Pi. If I kind of transition that up here, so I've got the Raspberry Pi up in this corner here. I could put another image in another part of the scene. That's in that corner. I could put something try that corner, and so on. And I can transition those separately. Something that I haven't talked about is rather than using the keypads, I'm actually, some of you saw this earlier on, I'm using this, this is Stream Deck. So for me to do the transitions, I just push buttons on this Stream Deck. So if I do that, pushing my mix button will just mix that away and mix it back in. So if you're wanting images to appear in various different corners or move around, you can sort of program those. Certainly you can program those into the scenes. I'm not sure, yeah, a bit of thought. I'm sure I could transition it so that something moves around. Maybe need to think about that, but yeah, you could transition corners in and out as you wished.
And could you and can you take your entire screen, for example, and then kind of shrink it down into a different corner so that you become the composite or something else?
Not as a shrink, that there is a limit. That would be, in broadcast, we'd call it a DVE move. I can make the entire screen slide, and I can mix, as you saw, I can mix down to me being smaller. I can't, I mean, maybe in the future there will be some Zoom type transitions, but I've not seen that kind of taking the big image and shrinking it down kind of transition.
Awesome. Thanks, Kit.
David, yes, go ahead. Unmute yourself first. Probably better.
Yes. I seem to have taken a lot of your time, actually, but I do appreciate it. It's very good. So the logic, as I understand it, is that you create your scene, rather like a Photoshop tap canvas, if you like, and then you create the sources, which are really different layers, and then you show or hide those layers according to what you want on that scene.
That would be transitioning those layers in and out. It wouldn't do a DVE move of shrinking me down and moving me into a corner.
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking about the logic of preparing something for OBS.
Oh yeah, so it's very
you start
much
off with the scene, and
Yes.
then you do the sort. You sort out your separate sources.
Yeah. You're absolutely right that the way OBS works is quite a lot like the layers in Photoshop. I'm quite experienced with using Photoshop, so yeah, it's a very similar kind of a process.
So that's just the logic, getting it into my head. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Sam,
go ahead. Oh, sorry. Didn't see that.
Hi, Kit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy, go for it.
It's all right. I had a question from Antonia on a message. Says, why does the caption paintbrush color say blue, but Kit's caption has a dark red background?
Sorry, say. Oh, it said. Sorry, my caption says blue, but I've got to change the color. The name and the color is entirely independent. I can call it whatever I want, and I think originally it was blue, and I decided purple. I changed it or something. I don't know. Every source you can call whatever you want, and I obviously at some point that video was blue, and I never changed the title of its name. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. So as you can see, I've got a photographer's real backdrop here. It's a green screen.
Yeah.
So am I stuck? Do I have to use my green screen? I have got one, a proper Chroma Key. Or can I use this backdrop and have something drop in as a layer?
There isn't, like in Zoom, there's a virtual, the Zoom processing has a guess at what is foreground and what is background. And I'm sure we've all seen, if Debs will move around a little bit, we will see the edges of Debs moving around not working very well because she doesn't have a green screen behind her. She's got a green screen, but it's not up at the moment. The electronics, the processing is much better at identifying foreground and background if there's something much clearer for it to go with, which is a green screen. So if I was in your situation, Sam, what I would do is I'd photograph your kind of swirly, colory black thing, use that as a virtual background, and then have your Chroma Key background up behind you, which would then allow you to replace it, use it, put whatever you want there. OBS doesn't have that pretend virtual background thing that Zoom does. So you have to have a green screen. There isn't, it's entirely true, but it works very, very much better with a green screen.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And if I don't get a chance to say it, I want to say thank you so much for how you've presented it today. It's been absolutely fantastic. A masterclass on how to do the technical stuff. So well done.
Yes. Martin, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I just first of all, I'd say thank you for the presentation. It reminds me how my memories of using Photoshop for some project really. So on the screen, so is it possible to resize the, let's say, object, let's say for example the timer, without actually going to properties, like let's say adjust?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if I just go back to screen sharing OBS again, so I had my no, not that one.
No. So let's say,
so you can see here I've got the timer image that I can turn on and off, and I can position that, and I can grab the corners and resize that as I want, put it wherever I want it to be. I don't need to go into properties. In fact, there isn't an awful lot in properties around its size and position. It's all done with the mouse this way.
Okay, and let's say it's slightly sized out. So is it possible? Let's say it's slightly a bit too big. This bit massive. Let's say in that timer screen, there's a bit massive, big gap between the plain area of the timer. Let's say the bottom bit is, in your case, is it possible to size it quickly enough?
I mean, I'm pretty quick. So there's plenty of occasions when. Okay, so a Toastmasters meeting last week, we were asked as part of the warm-up to say what our favourite food and our favourite drink. Before it got to me, I had already, off the internet, grabbed a pork pie and grabbed a picture of gin and tonic, composited those onto an OBS background, and when it came to me to speak, I put up the picture of the pork pie and the gin and tonic. So yes, it is possible to do that pretty quickly. And now I've got to go and have my pork pie. I've already had my pork pie today because it's pie day. Haven't had my gin and tonic yet. I think I need to call my waitress. Okay, bye, David. So, Guy, go ahead. Can't hear you, Guy. You're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. Wrong audio source or something. Okay, somebody else got a question while Guy sorts out his audio. Yeah, Florence, go ahead.
Okay, I just didn't catch how you can use the PowerPoint as a scene at the same time having you on the screen. Are you able to go over that, please?
Yeah, sure. This is something that is quite neat to do. Let me just get PowerPoint running again. With me. Right. Let me do it. So I've got a complicated PowerPoint way of doing things and an easier way of doing it. So let me go over to that one. Bear with me a second. Right. So this is what I'm going to try. This is what I'm going to try to achieve. I've done a number of PowerPoint presentations like this where I've made sure that in this part of the PowerPoint slide, I don't have any important information. So now what I'm going to do is to share OBS to show you how I've done this. So in OBS, I've got PowerPoint plus Presenter. And what I've got here is my webcam, which I've resized to position myself down the bottom and put myself in the corner a little bit more. And then here I am sharing as a window this PowerPoint slide. So what I've done here is I've gone and added a window capture, and I have captured the window of PowerPoint. So one of these, PPT, is the PowerPoint in PowerPoint slideshow mode. What I would normally do is run PowerPoint in presenter view. So on the screen in front of me, I can see presenter view. It's running on another screen or a virtual screen, and then I will grab that in slideshow mode. So you can see here it says PowerPoint slideshow, and that is then behind me. I don't want it to be in front of me, otherwise I will end up not being visible like that. And so I've got that running behind me, and then on my presenter view screen, I can click and I can transition from the different slides as I wish, with these builds happening as we need them. Does that answer you?
Okay, so do you have to have to the presenter view and the preview? Do you have to have two screens at the same time in order to use PowerPoint? So for example, if I'm in a meeting, Toastmasters meeting, and I have a presentation as part of my speech.
Right. So
is that how it works?
So what I would do if I've only got a laptop computer, I would use this little widget thing that I talked about earlier on, which is Headless Ghost. It costs like £4 from Amazon. Plug that into your computer, and your computer believes it's got another screen. I would then tell the PowerPoint to run in presenter view because it thinks it's got another screen. And then when I run that, the screen in front of me, the laptop screen, has presenter view. It's called a Headless Ghost. I went and lost that, so just give me a second. Headless Ghost Monitor Emulator, if you want a proper title for it, but I will show you just a second. But a moment. Right, so if I share my browser screen, wrong one. Let's go top left. Okay. So this is Amazon. This I hope you can see. So if I go and click on that, I'm fairly sure I'm sharing that with you. Yes, I am. Long name: HDMI dummy plug headless ghost display emulator. It's 376. So that's an HDMI one. You plug it into your computer. Your computer believes it has another screen. You go into your settings in PowerPoint. You tell it, in the PC, you say extended display, so that your PC thinks it's got two screens, got different things on each of those screens. In PowerPoint, you tell it presenter view, put the presenter view on your laptop screen, show the presentation on the other screen, and then you can build that composite image that we saw earlier on, like this, where this PowerPoint is running on that other virtual screen, and on the screen in front of you, you have presenter view.
Okay, thank you. One last question.
Yeah.
If I want to stream from Zoom using OBS to Facebook, can I use the free version, or I have to pay? I can't.
I'm not sure, because I've got a paid for version, so maybe somebody else could answer that. But because I use the paid version, I've not tried streaming to Facebook on the free version.
A free version. Okay, thank you.
But if you're using OBS and you're streaming from OBS, you just need a stream key. So you can go into Facebook, you get the stream key, which is a long alphanumeric string. You put that stream key into the settings within OBS, and that tells OBS where to send the video to. So even if you've got a free version of Zoom, you can do it by streaming from OBS using a Facebook stream key.
Thank you.
How are you doing for time? Oh, goodness me, it's 8 o'clock. Gin and tea o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock, yep. Any last questions, Guy?
Can you hear me?
Is your audio working now, Guy?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I updated my computer today and all the levels are gone. I do have some questions. First, a huge compliment, because I know how difficult it is even to understand it, let alone just explain it. So well done, Kit. But I have been using OBS as well myself and found it to be brilliant once you get your head around it. I just want to comment on what Sam was. I may interpret this wrongly, Sam, but I get this feeling that you've got your photographer's backdrop and you want something to appear here. And I suppose another way, Kit, is just literally to incorporate whatever the source that she wants and move the handles. Say, for instance,
you could do that. Yeah, absolutely. It is layered in front of you, which means if you moved your head would go behind it, not in front of it. So, yeah, it's a question of how you want that layering. If you want it to appear behind you, you need to key it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And then I have a question and then a suggestion to those others. So you showed the Stream Deck thing, which I think is a great that shortcut button thing. I use an app which is not a Stream Deck app. It's called Touch Portal. I don't know if you can see that. It's out of focus, unfortunately. I'm on a manual focus blooming lens. So, but it basically allows me. It's an Android app, and I can create infinite numbers of shortcuts using my phone. So that's and I found it to be incredibly useful. The only question I have to you now is I've never tried color correction, and so I've just been having a go with the color grading, because quite often my lighting is all wrong. Is there I've worked out how I can play around with the color grading to try and balance it out, but is there a white balance facility on OBS, do you think? Or I should just
if there is, I've not found it. I'd quite like an automatic white balance, because I've got red curtains here and my color changes during the course of the day. So I've not found an automatic white balance, so no.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks, Kit. Thanks for the show.
Okay, cheers, Guy. Andy.
Lovely. So Ben's just asked if there's an Apple equivalent. There's an app called Touch Portal, on the Apple App Store, which does pretty much the same kind of thing. So yeah, it's it looks like it's a free app with sort of a pay bits on it. So need to have a quick look at that. But just to wrap up then, can we just have a round of applause, please? You can take yourselves off mute and have a round of applause, please, for Kit. And that was an excellent. And given the subject as well, how technical and how complex it can be, I think it was delivered in a really simple, easy to understand way. And I'm sure that a lot of people will be watching the replay of this just because they couldn't write everything down in time. So a big thank you to Kit. Really appreciate it. So this will be done in the next couple of days. Depending on how many times I have to thrash the hell out of my computer to actually get it to do something. So I will send an email out to everybody once it's done and once it's uploaded onto YouTube, and you'll be able to download it. Next week at 7 o'clock, we have got Andrew Bennett, who is going to be talking about Gavel clubs and youth leadership. So if you are interested in doing the youth leadership part and you're interested in working with people under the age of 18 in Toastmasters, because officially you can't be a Toastmaster until you're 18, but Gavel clubs are designed for those who don't have access to the normal Toastmaster stream, then please join us for that. We will be putting information up in the relevant places over the next day or so. Just remains for me to thank Kit, thank everybody who's just joined us. It's been a great evening. Whatever you're up to, please stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. So very good night to you.